All right, everyone, welcome back to the Saturday in Athens GA podcast. My name is Marshall Barton, and today is going to be the first sort of overview of the offseason, recap of the 2025 season. Obviously, Indiana just won the national championship on Monday. Props to them. Congrats to them. They really, it's impressive what they did. Curt Cignetti's a fantastic coach. Fernando Mendoza is a fantastic player, very high-quality guy. So just want to start out this video by, giving them their congrats. It's impressive to be one of the worst winning percentage D1 teams of all time, or maybe the worst, and then over a 2-year span, make the playoffs twice and win an undefeated national championship, which, although it is only the second year of the expanded playoff, that hasn't been done. So a lot of credit to them. They're also the first team to make it through the bye week as a bye team in these expanded playoffs. So again, just credit to Indiana. Although I'm a Georgia fan, I hate every team that's not Georgia. Just gotta show them respect. They did a great job this year. Curt Cignetti's a fantastic coach. Just wanted to start the video with that. I see a lot of people trying to say that Curt Cignetti's now the best coach in college football. Don't know if I'd go that far, because what he did is probably more impressive than anything Kirby has done, maybe, with the exception of Kirby lost 15 NFL players and won the whole thing the very next year. So I think those are definitely comparable, but Curt Cignetti also, again, did just take one of the worst teams historically in college football and win a national championship with them in 2 years. I think that's incredible. Still don't think the body of work matches up to everything Kirby Smart's done across 10 years. But of course, they've inherited different situations, so that's also something that can be discussed. But moving on from Indiana and all that, this video is going to talk about a couple different things. Just kind of around the country, what's going on. Some more thoughts on Georgia Ole Miss. It's been I hate thinking about that game and rewatching that game. But I did a deeper look into it before I came on to this recording, so I'll explain some of the stuff I saw there in just a minute. I'll discuss a little bit of transfer portal stuff. Obviously, Georgia just had Stacy Searles step down as the offensive line coach, and Phil Rauscher, I believe that's how you say his name, that's what we're going to go with for this video, is taking over, so I'm going to discuss that briefly. And kind of what his resume is. But anyway, let's go and get into it. But first of all, I wanted to mention that I still think that the SEC is the best conference in college football. And I know a lot of you are going to think that's a hot take. And I know, of course, the Big Ten defenders will think that's a hot take. But I don't think that winning the title 3 years in a row, I think it's incredible for any conference to do that. I don't think that just by default makes you the best conference. You're probably the conference that has the most momentum, but when you have a conference that has 3 or 4 really good teams beating up everyone else, overall, I know it's not as simple as that, but that's how I would usually characterize it for Ohio State and Indiana and all those guys. But when you've got that, and you've got the SEC where every team's good and they're just beating each other up, it's a little different. It's hard to compare those two. I'd also like to remind people that the SEC won the national championship 12 out of 16 years before Michigan finally broke the drought in 2023. And then before that, Georgia won it, Bama won it, LSU won it, then Clemson won it. But I guess, again, I've already spoken about this before. I'm not some sort of SEC apologist that roots for every SEC team when they're playing a non-SEC team. Again, Georgia fan, hate every team that is not Georgia. But I guess I come on to say I still think that the SEC is a superior conference of college football. Obviously, it's gotten a little more even with NIL. Talent distribution is a real thing because you got a lot of these teams that aren't SEC teams or maybe aren't historically good, but they've got a pretty good alumni base that's funding them and funding their NIL program. I'm not taking a shot at them for doing that. That's within the rules. Why would you not do it? But overall, I still think that the SEC is the best conference in college football. That's a hot take. I know it is, and I'm not saying it's by a lot, but I still think it's the standard for college football, and we'll see what people think about that. We'll definitely upload this. But I just wanted to mention that because I've seen a lot of the hypothetical win for the SEC, hypothetical win for Big Ten, hypothetical win for Notre Dame, but those are just my thoughts on that. And while obviously SEC and Big Ten fans are majority going to disagree on all that, we can all agree that no one likes Notre Dame, right? Like how do you have a special contract that says if you finish inside the top 12, you'll make the playoff? I think that's stupid. I'd tell them to join a conference. That's what I'd say. But clearly they don't want to do that. I don't know why. They can be them. But I'm not a fan of that. I'm not a fan about what Notre Dame's about, especially with the special treatment and the non-conference stuff. But that's, again, discussion for another time. I'm yapping a little bit, getting a little off topic. But just wanted to shift it more into the SEC and then more specifically Georgia. I think Georgia's SEC outlook next year is really good. Georgia, obviously, every team's moving to the 9-game schedule in conference, so that'll be interesting to see. This being said, I've said this a couple times, I don't think, when you look at Georgia's 9-game SEC schedule, I don't think it's as bad as their 8-game SEC schedule from this year. They open with Arkansas, they get Vanderbilt back, they get South Carolina back, just a couple lower quality teams. You get Auburn in Athens. I'm not going to say how good or bad I think they'll be. We'll see what Alex Galesh does over there. But I'm not really, I was never really worried about any of the SEC schedules the past couple of years. I knew they were going to be tough, but I knew that Georgia was prepared for it. And with a guy like Kirby Smart leading your team, we were definitely going to be prepared for it. But I can say for sure that I'm looking forward to the SEC schedule in 2026 for Georgia. One of the two big games that are really circled on that list right now are Georgia at Alabama on October 10th and Georgia at Ole Miss on November 7th. I'll get a little bit more into that Ole Miss game in just a minute, or actually maybe not as much, but I'll definitely mention some things about Ole Miss in the previous game. But I do want to mention Alabama. Alabama is losing a lot of players next year. Not sure how they're going to look as a team overall because, I know they've got a bunch of recruiting talent, a bunch of younger guys sitting there, which is what Georgia's had for a long time. But I wouldn't exactly be too thrilled with what's happened this offseason if I'm Alabama. You've lost your entire defensive line, Tim Keenan, James Smith, Qual Russell, L.T. Overton. You lost your quarterback, Ty Simpson, to the draft. Don't know what's going on with Jay Miller, not 100% sure, so I can't speak on that. But I know that Jeremy Bernard's going to the draft and Isaiah Horton's in the portal. That's a lot of big impact players that Alabama had this year that will not be returning. They'll be okay. They've got, again, like I said, a bunch of talent. It's still Alabama. Not Saban's Alabama, obviously, but that's a lot of players to be losing in one offseason when you, in NIL era, that's not promising, but also, again, you don't have Nick Saban, so it's a lot different looking for them this time around. But I've spoken to several people about that, thought that was worth noting. But moving on to specifically Georgia and the Ole Miss game, like I said, I rewatched a little bit of that, or maybe I said that another time, but I rewatched a little bit further those highlights, some of the things that I took away from that game. And overall, I'm not a fan of shoulda, woulda, coulda, and that's not what I'm trying to do here. But Georgia overall had several chances to win that game against Ole Miss and just didn't find a way to win. You've got the fourth down early in the fourth quarter. You send the offense back out there. I'm personally a fan of that, but between Malachi Tolliver and Gunnar Stockton, maybe Monroe Freeling and Kirby Smart and all those guys, coaches and players alike, there is miscommunication there, which can't happen on a crucial down in the fourth quarter of games, and it led to a very quick Ole Miss touchdown. So that's one place I think Georgia let the game get away from themselves. Also, speaking about other places that Georgia really could have taken advantage of and didn't, or at least just, really screwed up, I feel like, was before the half. We were so passive. And now, before I go further into that, last year against Notre Dame in the Sugar Bowl, we tried to play it stupid aggressive, and we had a strip sack fumble, which led to Notre Dame 7 before the half. So I'm not saying let's go out guns a-blazing, trying to, reinvent the wheel right before the half, but we just ran it 3 times and gave the ball back to Ole Miss, and we were lucky that they really screwed up and didn't get the field goal unit on in time. But that's an advantage or a place where if you're up 21-12 and you have the football, be semi-aggressive and try to put the game away, which, you could have and you didn't. And there's, again, several moments. I think Peyton Woodring missing the field goal, you can't, obviously he missed the field goal, but that's football. Sometimes you're going to miss a field goal or two. So I'm not exactly placing all the blame on him for that, but that's a place where if Georgia has that field goal, it's a much different looking game. Third down and goal in the red zone. I don't know why you're throwing the football. I was sitting there thinking, why don't we just have a designed QB run for Gunner, have someone lead block, and see what happens here? I would love that. I think, first of all, he's not going to fumble the football. I would guarantee that. But also, if he doesn't get the touchdown, you can run down the clock, take the field goal, send it to overtime. So that's that. And then later in the game, on 3rd and 10, I don't exactly mind the press that much. I'm not exactly a fan of it, but I'm not super critical of it. I don't like the no safety help on that side to DeMelo Jones where the pass was caught. But ultimately, DeMelo Jones, I mean, the receiver made a play and made DeMelo Jones miss, got off the line pretty much untouched, and made a good football play, and Trinidad saw him. So ultimately, that was just bad execution on DeMelo's part. Their kicker's incredible. Their kicker made several 50-yarders earlier in the game and then made a long 40-something yard field goal to win it ultimately before the whole fiasco with the safety and the lateral play at the end. But ultimately, Georgia Ole Miss played a better game, and I think that comes down to the fact that Trinidad Chambliss is a great quarterback, and Georgia made a lot of crucial mistakes from a coaching standpoint and a player execution standpoint. Too many mistakes down the stretch, especially. But these are things they'll learn from. It's a very young team still. A lot of those guys are coming back, so you'll regroup from that and really grow from that. And speaking of that, I wanted to speak on two people specifically, which would be Mike Bobo and Gunnar Stockton. Mike Bobo, I feel like I would give him a grade of like good on the year. Before the Ole Miss game, I would have said great, but just kind of looking back at that and some other games throughout the year, Mike Bobo's biggest issue is we'll be up in games, we'll have it, or not even up in games, but like close, tied, maybe up a couple points, having a chance to put it away, and we just don't. We play to not lose a lot of times. We did it against Alabama in the 2023 SEC Championship. We did it against Tennessee after we went up, although I think he deserves a lot of credit for us winning that game. The fact that we were still in it, I could also place some blame on him for. The Texas game, I know we won by a lot, but we scored 14 points in the first quarter, or pretty close to it, and then just didn't do anything until the fourth. Although, again, I think he had some great play calls that game. Like, that's just the truth of it. Like, we've got to start next year. We've got to play aggressive at all times. I think Kirby did a really good job of, he saw we were passive a lot last year from a coaching standpoint, coaching decisions, and became more aggressive this year with the onside kick, putting the offense out there more often on fourth down. And I love that. But your offensive coordinator has got to be on board with that. And I think he was at times. But overall, you got an aggressive guy like Kirby, who's typically been more of a passive play caller, at least from an offensive standpoint. He's gotten a lot more aggressive this year. And Bobo really didn't follow, at least to the same extent, of aggressiveness that Kirby had this year. So I think a lot of that is a lot of improvement that Georgia could make as an offense. Next year would be to just be more aggressive as a team. Stop trying to play to hold on to a lead, put the game away, keep the foot on the gas. That's one thing Todd Monken did such a great job of. I remember the 2023 National Championship against TCU. We're up 59-7, something like that. And it's 4th and 5. We're in their territory, and we go for it. We throw a slant on 4th and 5. That's the type of play calling that Georgia needs next year on offense. That's the type of aggressiveness that Georgia needs on offense next year. And I hope we get it from Bobo. I know Kirby wants to see that out of him, and I guarantee you we'll see some improvement there. But that's my take on Bobo. I don't think Bobo has a good excuse if he doesn't win it next year. You got such a young team this year, and even though they were a great team, they're young. A lot of them coming back next year. And again, it was Gunnar's first year starting. If you can't figure out a way to get it done in his second year with the weapons you will have, we got to have talks at that point. And I said last year heading into the year that this was a make or break year for Bobo. That was probably a little inaccurate, or at least at the time I thought that was true. I think he did good enough to hold on to his job, and I support him holding on to his job. But at the same time, we got to get it done at some point. This is his third year and his second stint as the offensive coordinator at Georgia. He'll be heading into his fourth. Next year, we got to get it done, plain and simple. As far as Gunnar, I think he holds onto the ball very well. As far as not turning it over, I think he does a great job not turning the ball over and protecting the football. I think he's very accurate. I think he does a great job improvising with his legs, improvising on the ground. That being said, though, he holds onto the ball so long sometimes to where he needs to improvise. And over the next year, this offseason, I want to see Gunnar do a better job with going through his reads with the right timing. Sometimes he'd get off of his read too quickly. That was more of an issue than staying on the same read for too long, I thought. At least in the Ole Miss game, I saw it for sure one time. I think he's got to do a better job with the timing on his reads. Also want to see him take more shots down the field. Taylor Taylor obviously dropped the pass against Alabama, but he'll be open plenty of times. He'll be one of those deep threats. Get the football to him. Get the football to Isaiah Kane and get some jump balls. I think if we can just establish his confidence as a deep thrower, and get him to go through his reads with the right timing, he'll be in New York. That's my take, because he was close to that this year and struggled a lot of times with seeing the field, throwing over the middle, throwing in between the hashes, intermediate range, all that stuff. So with the struggles that he did have this year, he was still so good in other areas to where he was really in contention to go to New York. I think improve those several things over the offseason, and we'll be great. We'll be in great position as an offense and as a team next year for sure. But shifting gears a little bit, I want to talk about the offensive line coaching change. Stacey Searles had been with Georgia for the last 4 years as the offensive line coach. Had Matt Luke from 2020 to 2021. Then you had Stacey Searles 22, 23, 24, 25. But last week, we got news that Stacey Searles would be stepping down. I may have just said his name wrong. We got news last week that Stacey Searles would be stepping down as the offensive line coach, and that Phil Rauscher, that's how I'm going to say his name, Phil Rauscher actually is taking over as the offensive line coach. He had been an assistant at Georgia for some time, and I'll go over his resume in just a minute. But I really want to go over some of the things I view about Searles and his time at Georgia. I think he's definitely a little overhated, I guess, by the fan base in general. I know he had a stint that a lot of people were critical of when he was at Georgia the first time, quite a few years ago. But I think he did an okay job with Georgia in this past stint. I'm not gonna give him too much hate, and I think earlier in the year I was very critical of him, and he proved me wrong in a lot of ways. But in a lot of other ways, I feel like I'm not too upset about the move, especially because when I look at Phil Rauscher's resume. Pretty impressive. Again, don't know if that's how you say his name. Don't know if that's how you say his name. We're going to go with it. But I think he's an okay recruiter. He got a lot of big players, big body offensive linemen, but he never got a lot of like 5-star incredible talent outside of like Juan Guest. And he got some solid players like Monroe Freeling, but I don't even know if he was primarily the one. I can't remember if it was him or Luke that really got Monroe Freeling. I want to say it was Searles. But anyway, I guess my point is he was never an incredible recruiter. I think he was a good enough recruiter who had a couple players who were amazing that he got. Really, Gaston will be great, but not super impressed by his recruiting. It was good enough, though. Sound players, solid players. We'll go with that. I think he was an okay developer. When you look at what we had this year, we had a lot of older guys. So we had Drew Bobo as a senior at the center spot. Micah Morris, basically a super senior at the guard spot. But then you had Gaston and Glover at also your guard spots. You had Monroe Freeling as a tackle, who's going to the league, and Ernest Green, who I believe is coming back. No official word from him yet, but that's what it seems to be. And I don't know that he really can announce that he's leaving at this point. It's pretty late in the cycle. I guess he just didn't want to make a public announcement. I don't know. But overall, when you go past those guys, you don't know what your line is. You don't have as much certainty. I'll blame recruiting on that, honestly. And I mean, it's hard to get depth at many positions, but especially the offensive line position in the NIL era, for sure. I'd also say that it hurt him to lose a lot of his starting line, almost his entire starting line last season. He lost Wilson. He lost Tate Ratledge. He lost Dylan Fairchild. He lost probably another player or two that I'm just not thinking about. But overall, I think he was a good, okay, good to okay, somewhere in that range. We'll call him an okay developer. But again, not like I'm super impressed by him. You saw a lot of times this year when we had injuries and we had young guys in, it was a mess on the offensive line. I can't blame him for as much about the depth and inexperience part because of the NIL era. And also that's not something he can fully control. Also, obviously can't blame him for injuries, but it's his job to have that line in check. And they looked like again, just not a very well put together unit early in the year. I don't blame him, like, even majority for that, but as offensive line coach, he takes some responsibility there. I think the line got better as the year went on, so that's definitely something to look at and be grateful for that they improved game to game. I think they looked pretty bad, though, that last game against Ole Miss. And again, I think he had just a lot of criticism in general, just from experts. I don't really know. All I know is that he had definitely some criticism from the development standpoint, just surrounding him and his time at Georgia. But I'm excited for Phil Rauscher for sure. He has a great resume, in my opinion. I'm going to read it off to you here. He was the Broncos assistant coach in 2015 through 2017, Washington assistant and interim offensive line coach in 2018 and 2019. He was the Vikings assistant offensive line coach, and then he was their main offensive line coach in 2020 and 2021. 2022 through 2024, he was the Jags offensive line coach and was the run game coordinator in 2024. Came to Georgia last year as an assistant and is now our offensive line coach. So obviously, I can't tell you exactly how it's going to go. We don't have any body of work for him in college, but he's got a good resume based off where he's been and the positions he's held. And people keep rehiring him as an offensive line coach, so at least to some degree he knows what he's doing. But I'm excited to see what he brings. I think he's, again, got a good resume. Excited to see what happens there. But shifting from that, thank you to Stacey Searles for obviously a lot of hard work put into the program over both of his stints, but definitely faced a lot of criticism these past couple of years. Just want to thank him for what he's done for the program, and ready to get to work with Rauscher for sure. Going to wrap up the video here by mentioning some transfers we got out of the portal for this spring window. The first one is Gentry Williams. He's the defensive back, cornerback from Oklahoma, who had been hurt a lot of his career, his collegiate career at Oklahoma. But when he's healthy, he's a very good player. He's had ACL surgery. He's had shoulder surgery. So, again, injury prone, at least based off the body of work we have. Not saying he's going to get injured at Georgia. But when he's healthy, he's a very effective, very good player. He had 3 interceptions and 30 tackles in 2023, which was his best year statistically. Don't believe he played in 2024 due to one of those injuries. And he was the number 11 corner and a 4-star coming out of high school in 2022. But he's a 3-star to the portal. This is based off of 24/7. Not saying that really means as much nowadays, and especially after guys like Stetson Bennett, guys like Ladd McConkey. Don't know that this really means a lot, but I'm excited to have him. I think he'll be a very good addition for a corner room that could use the depth for sure, especially after losing Dalen Everett. And I know Daniel Harris didn't really play a lot of the year, or at least later in the year. But again, those are 2 corner losses. You would love to have some depth there, and we got some. So I'm excited to see that. Amaris Williams is one I'm really excited about. He's got 2 years left of eligibility, barring an injury or a red shirt. He's an edge out of Auburn, and he was a 4 to 5-star coming out of high school. He's a 4-star coming out of the portal. Not a lot of statistical production there from him, but he's got a very high upside. He's a very fast player. And he only had 2 sacks last year at Auburn, but I know the coaching staff's very happy to have him. I know Dog Nation in general is very happy to have him. And one of the things I've read and heard is he's a very good pair for Quintavious Johnson and Gabe Harris. So excited to see how he impacts Georgia's defensive line and pass rush in the upcoming season. My favorite addition so far that I can point to is Isaiah Canyon. Obviously, Georgia does lose several weapons in the wide receiver room, really your entire starting room this year, not counting London Humphreys, because you're losing Colby Young, you're losing Noah Thomas, you're losing Zach Branch, you're losing Dylan Bell. Hate losing all those guys, but I'm very excited to see Isaiah Canyon transfer from Georgia Tech. Great, again, big body wide receiver with great athleticism, good catch radius for sure, great catch radius even. He's 6'4", 215. So again, like that Colby Young, Noah Thomas type of guy. He had 480 yards and 4 touchdowns on 33 receptions this past season, which was 14.5 yards a catch. Same deal as Amaris Williams from Auburn. He has 2 years eligibility remaining, barring a red shirt, barring an injury or anything like that. I think it's a great replacement for Noah Thomas and Colby Young, as I said. The last one that we have officially that I want to point out is Khalil Barnes. Khalil Barnes is a safety transfer from Clemson, and he was a freshman All-American in 2023 with Clemson. I think he's a great addition following, again, the loss of Ja'Cory Thomas. He's out of eligibility, so he'll be heading to the draft. But Khalil Barnes had 7 interceptions in his career at Clemson. Those all came in the first 2 years that he was there. He had 139 tackles across 3 years. He's 6 foot, 200 pounds. I think that's a pretty good frame for a safety. And I think he'll pair up great in our safety room. And we simply wanted to benefit from some depth. Wow, we wanted to benefit. Wow, I'm losing my words here. I'm sorry. The safety room really wanted to add some depth this offseason. And I think they got that in Khalil Barnes, but they got more than just that. Barnes is more than just a depth piece. He probably could start. He may start. I'm not really sure how that's going to look, but he's a fantastic addition, not just a depth piece, but someone who could be a true difference maker on the defensive side of the ball. I also wanted, this is the last person we'll talk about for the entire video, Caden Lee. He is in the transfer portal right now from Ole Miss. He's not committed to a team. I'm not sure too much of the extra details, but a lot of people are predicting him to go to Georgia. It sounds like right now that if he does not withdraw his name from the transfer portal, he will end up at Georgia. Now, Trinidad Chambliss is still fighting for an extra year at Ole Miss. I know he got denied, but he's appealed that decision. He's trying to get an extra year. If he gets that extra year, it does sound like Caden Lee will probably return to Ole Miss. If not, I expect him to be at Georgia. I would be very excited to have him. I'm not going to call him our next Zach Branch, but he's very similar from his play style. He had 635 yards for Ole Miss this season in the air, 3 touchdowns, 14.4 per catch, and 44 catches. So he'd be a fantastic addition. He's a 3-star out of high school, 4-star out of the portal. And again, if Trinidad does not win his appeal to the NCAA, I expect Caden Lee to be at Georgia, plain and simple. But anyway, thank you all for watching this video. We kind of went over the college football around the country in general, went over our offensive line coach changes, went over Bobo and Gunner, a little bit about Kirby, and then went into some transfer portal commits and potential commits. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe. Please follow on Instagram. I'll upload some of these shorter clips on here, there. Stay safe, of course, as the winter storm is making its way through the USA this week. Not sure how it's going to impact Georgia, but praying for y'all's safety. Be safe and go Dogs.